Push your luck in a diamond-encrusted mine. Flip a card, distribute treasures, and then there's just one decision. Are you staying in or banking your treasure and heading home? A simple, tense card game for 3 to 8 players from the superstar design duo of Bruno Faidutti and Alan Moon. That's the hook. I'm Adam Porter. I design games and I review them on this channel with a focus on product design. If you like what I do, please subscribe, comment and share the video. In my Game Design Hall of Fame series, I pick out games I love, which have undeniably proven themselves as titans in the industry. Sushi Go, Viticulture, King Domino, Carcassonne, Everdell. And today I'm adding Diamant to the family. Diamant was first released in 2005. Designer Alan Moon was flying high after winning the prestigious Spiel Des Jahres award the previous year for Ticket to Ride. His second win, Elfenland, won the award in 1998. And frankly, Diamant should have been his third. Diamant was recommended by the Spiel Des Jahres jury. Other recommendations and nominations that year included Torsten Gimler's No Thanks, Friedemann Fries's Power Grid, and Kramer and Kiesling's Verflixt. Strong competition from an incredible lineup of games. But I think Diamant is the best of the bunch, and I have no hesitation in recommending Diamant over the award winner, Niagara, which fell a little flat for me. Alan Moon partnered with his frequent collaborator, the prolific designer Bruno Faidutti, to create Diamant. Initially published by Schmidt Spiele. The game was renamed Incan Gold in its subsequent edition from Eagle Gryphon, and then reverted to Diamant in 2016, with a gorgeous graphic overhaul from Iello and the Bunny Kingdom artist Paul Mafayon. Diamant has never had an expansion or a sequel, though 2 new modules are due for release in a mini expansion this year. There's considerably less material for me to cover with Diamant than some of the other games in my Hall of Fame series, so I won't be taking a deep dive of the same scale as my enormous Carcassonne or King Domino or Everdell overviews. I was inspired to showcase this unassuming little title after a recent game with family, which reminded me why, after all these years, it's still among the best games in my collection, and why it remains permanently in print. It may not be as prominent as Ticket to Ride, Catan or Pandemic, but Diamant is a true evergreen, and it deserves more acclaim. Throughout the game, a group of 3 to 8 explorers will venture into 5 treasure-laden mine shafts, risking hazards and trying to keep the most treasure for themselves. A card is revealed, and the number on the card determines how many gems are available, and they're distributed evenly to each of the players, with any leftover gems remaining on the card. All players then simultaneously reveal whether they intend to stay in the mine or return to the camp. And if players return to camp, they split any gems sitting on the cards, again leaving leftovers behind, and place their collected gems into their chest, where they'll be safe until game end. Of course, if you're the only player to leave, you'll get to keep all the gems from the cards for yourself. Players who remained in the mine turn over another card, and once again split the gems, and so the game continues. But not so fast. Some of the cards are hazards, and there are 5 different types, with 3 of each in the deck. One hazard of a specific type is fine, but if a second emerges, all players who are still in the dungeon are eliminated, losing all of the gems they've gathered that round. A third card type is the artifact. These are worth 5 or 10 points, but the only way you can claim them is if you leave the mine and no other players come with you. If multiple players leave the mine, the artifact remains for another adventurer to collect later. Over 5 rounds, the players gather a hoard of treasure into their chests, and the player with the most treasure at game end wins. So we'll start as ever with Onboarding. The cover uses a colour palette lifted straight out of Scooby-Doo, with a title font reminiscent of Indiana Jones. These are subtle references, but they set expectations of peril, adventure, backstabbing and camaraderie. It's an appealing image which tells you exactly what you're going to be doing and exactly what you're going to feel. I can't fault it. The rules are crystal clear, and the game is a breeze to teach. This is a perfect introductory game, short enough for an after-dinner session or a quick intermission between longer games. Now, I rate games using my own ladder engagement system. Games are scored between 0 and 3 in 5 categories, and each point scored climbs the game 1 rung up the ladder. A score of 10 or above tops the ladder and indicates a real favourite with me. For thematic immersion, Diamant scores 2. The theme makes a lot of sense, and you do feel the peril that the imagery invokes. Now, I've stopped short of awarding full marks because the traps lack any personality. They all function identically, so you don't really notice whether you're being consumed by a snake, squashed by a boulder, or overrun with spiders. For interaction, it's a 3. The game is packed full of interactive moments, trying to read your opponent's intentions. It's hugely satisfying to see your opponents perish in a hideous trap the very turn after you headed back to camp with an enormous stash of gems. It's exciting watching that one foolish player pushing on through a perilous series of cards, defying all the odds. You find yourself willing them on, even when they're stealing victory before your very eyes. You can't help but get caught up in it. This is a game full of stand-up moments, invoking cheers or groans. The artifacts offer another intriguing decision. Now, you really don't want to leave unless you're heading out alone. But what are my opponents planning? Now, these cards didn't feature in the original game. They were introduced in the Incan Gold editions, but they remained in Yellow's beautiful edition, making it the definitive version of the game. The stress and tension in the game couldn't be greater. Push your luck titles are always strong in this aspect, and it may not be to everyone's taste, but if you have a gambling spirit, this one will be right up your street. And for feedback, again, this game excels. Your in-game choices are rewarded or punished with immediate and dramatic effect. The game itself comes to life and offers up just as much personality and interaction as the other players do. Sometimes it feels like the game is on your side, but more often, it's mocking you. And for meaningful choices, it's a 2. The game is not full of deep decisions, but they are genuine, sincere, impactful decisions. You know the odds, and you choose to take the risk or play it safe. Win or lose, it's on you. The overall score of 13 tops the ladder. Now, I sometimes make deductions for incoherent rulebooks and fiddly or unintuitive gameplay, but no such problem here. Diamant sits proudly at the top of my ladder. It's a true classic, but there must be some drawbacks, right? Can't all be positive. Well, yeah. The biggest issue with the game is the blowout rounds. It's not uncommon for a pair of matching hazards to be drawn in quick succession, potentially even before any players have gathered a single gem. These occasional wipeouts are amusing in the context of many games played, but they can be off-putting. And in my experience, for whatever reason, they seem to happen every time I introduce the game to new players. Diamant is like an unruly child, never showing its best side until you get to know it a bit. I feel like I'm always apologising for it. I promise you'll grow to love it if you just give it a chance. In an industry completely saturated with new games which are a bit more rigid but offer a predictable, pleasant, sanitised first experience, Diamant does stand out a little. Bruno Faidutti has made a name for himself with slightly chaotic, antagonistic titles like this one. Animo Crazy is a totally unique, wild, unfair party game where players pose new rules and then vote on which ones are instigated as the game progresses. In Dragon's Gold, players work together to defeat dragons, then bicker and argue over the distribution of the rewards. If the time runs out before an agreement is made, no one gets anything. Even when reined in by Alan Moon, the ordered designer of Ticket to Ride and Airlines Europe, Faidutti's mischievous side can't help but break through in Diamant. So on to my product design checklist. Is the game innovative? Well, I think so. There are actually relatively few pure push-your-luck games in the hobby, in comparison to other mechanisms, and this is one of the preeminent and early examples. Quacks of Quedlinburg is a massive title right now, but that was released 13 years after Diamant. Port Royal, Deep Sea Adventure and Captain Carcass are all excellent games, but not as universally acclaimed as Diamant. My personal favourite, Zoch Verlag's Auf Teufel komm raus, never seems to get a look in. And that's not to mention my own twist on the genre, Compromat, co-designed with Rob Fisher, which offers up a tense head-to-head duel for 2 players, but can't compete with the massive player count of Diamant. Which brings me on to my next question. Does this game solve a problem, or fill a gap in the market? Well, categorically yes. This game scales incredibly well. If you're looking for an engaging, interactive game for large groups without an extended duration, there are very few viable options, and Diamant is among the best of them. But it also plays really well with 3 or 4 players too. It's a very versatile package. As a side note, the game can technically be played with 2 people, but it advertises itself as 3 to 8, and rightly so. Playing with 2 is serviceable, but it doesn't give the full experience. Will the game grow with its user? Well, this is perhaps where the product is lacking. There's no variety between games, or even rounds of the game, aside from the order in which the cards emerge from the deck, and the metagame created by the players and their interactions. It's unusual for such a successful game to find itself approaching its 20th anniversary without a single expansion or sequel, nothing to refresh the experience. Now that's not to say that you'll tire of the game quickly, it's too much fun for that. But I've found it's a game I return to every once in a while, rather than a permanent fixture that I come back to week after week. That said, I've been playing sporadically for over a decade, and I'd still never turn down a game of Diamant. It's interesting to reflect on the possible reasons why Diamant has remained a second-rung evergreen title, not reaching the enormous heights of Moon's Ticket to Ride or Pandemic or Wingspan. Now I'm splitting hairs here, of course. Not every game can sit on the winner's podium, and remaining in print for the best part of 2 decades is not to be scoffed at. But Diamant is not a brand to rival Catan or Carcassonne or Dominion. So why is that? I think there's a timing issue. Catan, Carcassonne and Ticket to Ride all captured a moment. While innovative, Diamant doesn't have the obvious prestige of being the first deck builder like Dominion, or leading the vanguard of cooperative games like Pandemic. But I think it's worth noting how anodyne the top-rung evergreen titles are. There's nothing mischievous about Carcassonne or Wingspan or Pandemic. Diamant feels a tad more anarchic, and perhaps the mass market isn't looking for that. That said, we can't overlook the enormous success of Munchkin or Exploding Kittens. There's a market for chaos and combative take-that mechanisms. Perhaps the problem is that Diamant is not anarchic enough. Maybe it falls between 2 stools. But as I said, this is splitting hairs. It's an incredible idea, and it's executed exceptionally well by designers and publisher alike, and hence sitting in the orange section of my idea execution matrix, indicating a hugely successful product and a commercial hit. In this industry, older titles can sometimes get lost among the shiny new titles, so perhaps you haven't yet had the chance to give Diamant a try. I'd suggest you rectify that. I don't think you'll regret it. If you enjoyed this retrospective, you might enjoy one of my other Hall of Fame videos, so follow the link.